Thank you so much for being here. I know it's the end of a long day for you all, but it's so important that you're here today to take part in this process. We appreciate it very much. So this is our staff group. And I'll just introduce myself that I am Steve Horton with the Ohio School Boards Association. It's been my privilege since actually going back to December, we talked about it, working with your board through this process and culminating with a choice for a new superintendent. And all of you play a very important role in that decision for the board. So this is part of that process. I wanted to also welcome Dr. Rebecca Kaye, who is with us, came in last night from Oklahoma City. She's with the Oklahoma City Public Schools. And so she's going to share more about herself here in just a little bit. Yeah. Before we get to that, there's quite a few of you in the room, and I want to be sensitive to time because following a presentation that she's going to do, I do have a lot of questions that all of you have submitted, and I want to get through as many of those as possible with our candidates. So I was just curious, among all of you here, how many of you are elementary, either support staff or teachers in the room? Raise your hands. Okay, good. How many of you represent middle school? Okay. High school? A few. How about administration? Good. Well, I'm going to break that out a little bit more. How many of you are building-specific administration? Excellent, thank you. Are there any central office people here? Fantastic, thank you. So we've got a good representation. Any of you affiliated in terms of support staff? Thank you. Good. We have a great representation here. So the way we're going to do this is we have asked the candidates to prepare a 15-minute or so presentation just on a very simple question about their vision for leadership of the Akron Public Schools. So each candidate's had the opportunity to prepare that. So we're going to let Dr. Kaye share that presentation with you. Followed by that, then I want to get into the questions that were submitted and give her time to answer those questions for you. And we do hope that you will go to the link for the survey form and give us your input following this. That's the important thing for the board, is to be able to hear and see what you feel about each of the candidates. So they will be working with that as they get into the deliberation phase. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kaye.
Awesome, thank you so much, Mr. Horton. Can everybody hear me? You're good there, yes? That side? Friends from outside, mask sister, you can hear me? You're good? Cool. Well, good afternoon, Team APS. I am super excited to be with you today. My name is Rebecca Kaye, and my preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am thrilled to be here to learn more about Akron, the schools that you all make happen for young people every day, and those young people who are at the center of all of our work. Do we have slides, Mr. Josh?
Absolutely.
These sort of help me stay on track and give you something to look at besides staring at me like casing like a caged animal up here. I have, so you all know, I have red lines that I have to stay inside of because they are live streaming this. And if I go outside the red lines, they can't see me. So my apologies to the friends on my far left and right, because usually I would be over there at some point, but I'm not allowed to. So I'm following Steve's rules.
They told me those rules, so
So I think to start off with, it is very important to me to acknowledge that the ground beneath our feet is part of who we are. It reflects our histories and influences our futures. The land on which we are gathered here right now is the home of the Erie and the Kaskaskia peoples and other tribes who called this land their home before their forced removal. We celebrate the innumerable and ongoing contributions of Indigenous peoples to the Akron community and to our region. It is very important to me to start off by grounding us in that history and understanding that part of how we got here. So the board asked me to start this forum off with a presentation about my vision for Akron Public Schools. But I am afraid to tell you that that would have been the world's shortest presentation because I don't have one. A vision is not held by a leader on her own. It is held by a community. Really, it is held by you, the team that makes this district what it is. So I have more questions than answers about what that vision is for the district, for Akron Public Schools. And so this is like a little bit of a spoiler alert. Like if you're thinking of this as a test of how much I know about Akron, I'm gonna fail. I have been here since 8:06 p.m. last night. And it is the first time I have been to Akron, Ohio in my life. And I just want to say that up front. Important context. What I do want to share with you instead is kind of more about who I am and what you can expect from me as a leader. I am an extremely values-driven person, and my two most core values are integrity and courage. Everything comes back to those two things for me. Sometimes I think all I really know how to do is listen and tell the truth. And my purpose in life is to use the privilege that I have been given to redesign systems for racial and social justice. So integrity and courage are deeply connected for me to practicing anti-racism and anti-oppression, not just in my professional life, but also walking in integrity in everything that I do. I'm kind of obsessed with unleashing the power of human potential energy. So I use that phrase, that term potential energy, which comes to us from physics, because I heard this incredible speaker last year at the National School Boards Association Equity Conference talk about the ways that we weaponize the word potential to lower our sights for some students in predictable ways. So I stopped using that word, but I've been really thinking about this idea of potential energy. You know, potential energy is the possibility of action and energy that comes from the compression of a spring. Like, how do we unleash the power of potential energy in each human being? I love this quote from a former board chair of another APS, Atlanta Public Schools, which is where I worked for 12 years of my career. So Benjamin E. Mays said, "Every person is born into the world to do something unique and something distinctive. And if they don't do it, it will never be done." This calls us, I believe, to think differently about schooling. Education is the practice of freedom, and we must grow toward every young person having a right to the power and freedom to choose their own meaningful adventure in life. So it starts there for me. And it's about this like obsession that I have with maximizing human potential. I think in Oklahoma City a lot about how many times the kid who had the potential energy to cure cancer might have been born in Northeast Oklahoma City. And that kid never had a certified math teacher. So when I think about why I'm wired this way, because it really is about like, you know, maybe some screws I have loose. I think about growing up in Virginia. I grew up in the mountains in Virginia, not far from where the Civil War ended. So I'm a Southerner. I have hard-working parents who were fourth-generation Oklahomans. They moved far away from their home because of opportunities that my dad got through the Navy. And I learned to work hard watching them both start college when I was in grade school. My brother and I were in grade school. I attended their college graduations when I was in the 5th grade and the 8th grade. And those moments are memories that I cherish, of course. But what I cherished even more is that when I was in the 8th grade, my mom graduated and left being a part-time clerk at a fabric store to being a diabetic renal nurse. The week after she got paid the first time, she took me to the mall to buy clothes for the first time in my life when I was 14 years old. And there are some stylish gentlemen in here. I feel confident that the ladies in the room know exactly how big of a deal that was for my 14-year-old self. I learned one of the many powers of education that day. And because I had amazing teachers in my own public school experience, I was drawn to teaching after college. I moved to Atlanta to teach. And there in a part of town that was immortalized by Outcast and Goody Mob as the SWATs, I learned exactly how fortunate I had been to have access to opportunities because of the high quality public schools where I lived, and because of the unearned advantages that society offered to me because of who I am and what I look like. I learned more about how the world really works from 35 12-year-olds, African-American 12-year-olds in my first year than I had in the previous 22. And saying yes to that service, saying yes to this obsession, set me on the path of a lifetime and on a mission to use the privilege that I have to redesign school systems for justice. I have never once woken up and wondered why I was born. And I know educators well enough to know that a lot of y'all in this room know what I'm talking about and feel the same way. Since then, I have walked a little bit of a different path than a lot of other education leaders. I spent most of the intervening 20+ years working in policy at the federal, state, regional, and local levels, which means I see the big and the small and how they connect to each other. It means I know a lot about how big urban systems tick. It also means that I see what is possible inside of the rules rather than what's impossible. And I know how to do the work with school boards, state legislatures to change the rules when they need to work differently for kids and teachers. As I moved into executive leadership in Atlanta and Oklahoma City, I leaned into building what I would call power with community rather than power over. You know, like, who are the experts in the room? Communities are the experts in what they need. So building power with our community to tackle big wicked problems. Family engagement, community-owned school strategic planning, teacher retention, generational enrollment declines, structural budget imbalances, district redesign, equity and belonging, closing the digital divide during COVID, and installing a clear and compelling vision and strategic plan for the next 5 years that was approved in December in Oklahoma City. Each of these was specific to a context. Everything is specific to a context. But I know a lot about how to do this work with trust, caring, and collaboration. So just one example of that. This is my friend Carmen. This is Carmen and I at the Oklahoma Teacher Walkout, which you might like Google it if you don't know about it. 2018, spring of 2018. At that time, Carmen was a school secretary at Edwards Elementary School. She had kids in the system. She was a Girl Scout leader. She's amazing. And I got to know her because she was on the Northeast Task Force, which was a community task force that I co-led with one of my colleagues to design solutions to the problems that were being faced by Northeast Oklahoma City, which is the traditionally African-American part of town. Our enrollment and our performance was declining. The schools were not meeting the kids' needs. So Carmen was like one of those people who was all in. You know, she had kids in schools that other people would call the worst schools in the district and the worst schools in the state. And I am proud to say actually that that task force made 8 recommendations and we've made meaningful progress on 7 of those 8. We're still working on some, but we're gonna get there. So I met Carmen through this process, and she was the seed of an idea to create a pipeline for our professionals from being paraprofessionals into being teachers, specifically for paraprofessionals of color. Because in Oklahoma City, like many places, we have a challenge where our kids don't see themselves in their teachers. So we need to increase the number of great teachers of color in our schools. That has been a priority for Oklahoma City. So I am proud to say that Carmen, I saw this picture in the airport of her on my way here yesterday because she is a poster child with her beautiful self for one of our local universities. And she is a pre-K teacher in Northeast Oklahoma City today. So Carmen actually was doing this work on her own before the diverse teacher pipeline was created, but she was the inspiration for it. And now support staff like Carmen, they get supported to and through college. Their tuition and fees that are not paid for by federal student aid are paid for by our foundation. So it's a big deal. I am also here because my mentor, who was the National Superintendent of the Year, God rest her soul, she told me years ago when I shared that I was watching her and thinking that I was called towards superintendency. She said, and she had a very cute Jamaican accent, which I do not have. So just imagine, if you will. I need you to do it because if people like you don't say yes, we're not gonna fix this. It's my something unique and something distinctive. I am also here because I've noticed a few things about Akron. I'm gonna need your feedback on this part because as I have spent like less than 24 hours here, I know that whatever I have observed is possibly wrong and definitely incomplete. So I'm gonna ask you to play a little game with me. Some of y'all might have used the Fist to 5 protocol in your classrooms. So you hold up your fist if I am completely bananas and completely off track. Yeah. You hold up a 5 if yes, right on, I strongly agree with that. You can hold up some number of fingers in between, but please only polite fingers. If you're somewhere in between. Got it? Okay, so can we practice one time? Dr. Kaye's jacket is yellow. Fist of 5. 5 means agree, 0 means you're a lunatic. 0.
Everybody's covered.
I feel like maybe I have stepped into being insensitive to disability. So I'm sorry, my apologies, we can talk later. So everybody's got it. I'm gonna kind of read a statement that encapsulates something that I think I've learned, a hunch I have about Akron, and then I'll ask you to throw up some fingers. First, there is a lot that is going really well. Dr. James and Dr. McWilliams-Woods have done remarkable work building a stable foundation and raising the floor of opportunity for young people. I would name college and career academies, next generation learning, progress on our graduation rate, all of those are examples of this. So fist of 5, there is a lot of good progress happening that we need to keep. Okay, thank you. I saw mostly lots of fingers, not complete 5, so I haven't got more to learn about that one. My second hunch, the school board and the community appear to share my anti-racist values and my belief that equity is a verb, meaning it's something we do, it's something that we practice. The historical roots of justice are here. I mean, how cool is it that I can stand in the place where Sojourner Truth said, "Ain't I a woman?" And Akron is ready to start the uncomfortable work of walking the talk of equity. Fist of 5. You don't have to be sure. You don't have to be right. Not making a decision is a decision. But I'm with you. I got it. I have some more work to do on that one. Sounds like maybe we have some more work to do together on that one. So 3, this is my last one. There is still work to do. Opportunity and student outcomes are still predictable based on social factors. And some students have been affected more profoundly by the challenges of the pandemic. There are systemic barriers that we have to tackle to redesign for justice and equity. Fist of 5. Thank you all for playing along on my game. I feel like there have to be multiple ways to collect data on these things, and it is really hard coming from outside to know what it feels like to be in an organization. I am intrigued and energized by the idea of being part of this if it is directionally correct. But I think it's important to know that I know that I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But I believe that's how we learn. And if we are making mistakes, we're not working on hard enough problems. I also believe my job is to get it right, not to be right, as I call her Saint Brene Brown would say. We have to be here to get it right, not to be right. I want to share with you a short video that illustrates what I think my hunch is lies before us as a team.
सर आपके लिए उस पार कार का इंतजाम किया है सर। आइए सर। चल
कुछ करो ना।
मेहमान जाके क्या उखाड़ूंगा?
कैसी जाने बूंदे आई, जाने कैसा दर्द लाई, सामने क्या है ये तेरे, क्यों रुका है तू बता दे। कौन तुझको पार लेगा, कौन होगा वो मसीहा, मुझसे तू ढूंढता है वो ही है तू वही है। तेरा रास्ता है, तेरा है सहारा, कोई तुझको पार लेगा, तू ही है तेरा किनारा। तुझमें तेरा रास्ता है, तुझमें तेरा है सहारा, तू ही तुझको पार लेगा, तू ही है तेरा किनारा। से ढूंढता है तू ही है, तू ही है, तू ही है तेरा मसीहा हो।
That's it. That's everything. The question is, what role will each of us play? I will close with a story that illustrates who I will be, which role I will play. As I was in the process of being recruited away from Atlanta, it was a city and a district that I loved. I lived in Atlanta for 17 years. I still miss it. I got connected to this super talented education leader who she had relocated to Atlanta with her husband, and she was trying to find kind of her place. So kind of, she was new to the city, and long story short, she ended up coming to work for APS as our director of early childhood. As she was entering, she did what smart people do. She asked everyone she encountered, who do I need to get to know? Who are the influencers? Who are the energizers? And she called me at the end of that week, and she told me about what she had been up to. And she said, you are the first person that every single person mentions, no matter what department or what school they're in. She said, one person told me, you have to get to know Rebecca Kaye. She is the beating heart of APS. I am here with you today because I wonder if the next step in my journey is to be the beating heart of APS again. And I really thank you for being here with me to answer that question. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Dr. Kaye. So I want to get to the questions that have been submitted. There were many of them. We're not going to get to all of them, and I realize for half the room now, I'm probably just the voice behind the wall, but I'm going to.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
The man behind the curtain is. but I do want to hit on the main themes that are definitely present in these questions, give you a chance to respond to. So, first question. What do you consider to be your greatest contribution to the district you have worked in or are working in now?
It's interesting because that question sounds like a question about a project or an initiative. But I think for me, it's that culture work, like being committed to living in alignment, to being the heartbeat and beating the drum, and supporting people through change has been my greatest contribution. So I've contributed to a whole lot of change in Oklahoma City, from a long-range facilities master planning process, district redesign. You know, we launched we pulled off Take Home 1-to-1 in 4 months last summer, including launching an LMS and Canvas and all of those things, and planning the professional learning that our teachers needed. We changed our calendars so that teachers would have more professional learning for that. Our new strategic plan is probably kind of the culmination of that, and I'm working right now on cascading it down, because, you know, a plan on paper is beautiful, but it doesn't mean anything if we're not all singing from the same hymnal. So I think building that capacity to change culture and to be different has been my greatest contribution. One thing to know about my just immediately previous experience is that when I served, had the honor to serve as the acting superintendent for 5 months. And the board asked me to take care of the team during that time. I was the 13th superintendent since 2000. And one of the superintendents served for 5. So if you take him out of the mix, by the time my current superintendent, Dr. Sean McDaniel, came, because I did not apply for that job, I did not pursue it. By the time he came, there were 13 superintendents in 13 years. And APS enjoys, and I'm guessing might take for granted a little bit, how important that stability is for building a culture. We can talk more about how we have undone some of the culture of just hiding and fear. And I know what this is. I'm not going to get attached to you because you're not going to be here next year. So, you know, I have walked with our team through that and our community through that. And I think that's my greatest contribution.
Thank you. How important to you are community ideas, family caregiver, parent input into district decision-making?
So I already used a phrase that I often use, which is the communities are the experts in what they need. I am a very firm believer in centering the voice of students, and specifically and intentionally centering the voices of students who have been placed at the margins. So you have to focus the circle where the greatest need is. Now, that said, there is this tension between communities are the experts in what they need and what Henry Ford once said, which was, if I asked people what they needed, they would have told me a faster horse. That it's our job as professionals to guide how we understand those problems, the data that we bring to the table, how we frame and understand the change ideas that we bring to improve on those problems. Because, I mean, that's why we all went to school, to do this. You know, like, it takes the collaboration and an equal partnership between parents, students, community, and the professionals in the system to really create solutions that match our context and that help us learn and grow and keep growing and keep staying in motion. So.
Thank you. As superintendent, what is your vision for expanding and encouraging greater participation in academically challenging programs such as advanced placement and IB?
So I'm gonna be a broken record on this one. I don't have a plan. Because you can't have a plan without really understanding the context. So there is a quote attributed to Albert Einstein that if I had an hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes understanding the problem and the solution would become self-evident. I am a very big believer in that kind of thinking. So the first thing that I would do to come up with a plan is really understand what's happening in Akron schools. Is it that young people are predictably prepared or not prepared for those advanced academic tracks because of what experiences they're having between birth and when they are able to apply to enter them? Is it, like, one thing I noticed on the website is that applications for some of your magnet programs are due in October or November when I am the highest information parent in the district. And I am not thinking about next school year in October or November. So what does that mean for our families who have less savvy and less ability to navigate systems and less information? So I have some like hunches on this one about directions we might go in. Another one that comes up for me is, one thing that happened in some of our schools that have international baccalaureate is that, it didn't seem fun for the kids from outside because like they saw their peers who were doing like creative stuff and the fine arts, and the IB kids were not doing that. And they were doing 2 hours of homework every night. And kids are smart. And they're like, this is a race to nowhere. So how do we make sure that that's not true? And that once it's not true, kids don't continue to believe that it's true. Like, how do they see the vision for what investing that time and energy is gonna yield at the end? So that's, I think that covers what that question was trying to get at.
Good. Will you visit school buildings frequently? Why or why not?
There's a right answer to this question. I am not happy if I do not spend at least half a day in schools every week. And I say that like actually really literally, like me visiting schools and being with young people, like the amazing ones that I saw at the Barber CLC this morning. Act with and learn from, yes. Is that Miss Williams down there? That is what gives me life. And it is where I learn the most about what the next steps need to be in our pathway. I love learning. In my district, we are on the beginning end of doing some of the University of Virginia's Partners for Leaders in Education work. And one of my one of the things that stuck in my head from that is going to the Gemba, which is a term that means go to the place where, go to where the work is happening. Go to the place where it happens. And I believe that in order to understand what's happening in our schools, you gotta get really close to it. Which means that y'all, those of you who are teachers or building administrators, support staff, y'all know way more than I do and will ever know about what is really happening in our communities and what our young people need. So my job is to figure out how to aggregate and amplify the voices of what's going on in the schools. And I have to schedule that time. It is really easy for a superintendent's time to be completely swept away with the tyranny of the urgent. So hopefully I will have a really authoritative administrative assistant who will be the brains behind the operation on that. That's one thing that I need in order to make sure that that happens.
Great. How will you work with district leaders, school leaders, and Akron Education Association leadership to improve the instructional effectiveness of our teaching staff?
So I see one of the very most important priorities for me, or really whoever comes into this role, is weaving together the threads of really cool stuff, powerful stuff that's happening into one unified vision of what's happening. The sense that I have, just looking from outside, and again, like I could be wrong, like it could be somewhere and I don't know where it is. The feeling that I get is that it's like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and I don't have the box. So like the pieces are all there, but I don't know what the picture is. And so I think that district leaders, the board, school leaders, our employee organizations, especially with the leadership of the Akron Education Association, will be critical partners in figuring out what the picture on the box, like, is it a pony? Is it a Mountain View? Is it Darth Vader? I don't know. But if we know what the picture is, it's gonna be that much easier for us to put the pieces together. And I think that through that process, we will build the relationships that we need to be able to have the trust that will be required to do the hard stuff to make it happen. You know, I think I am not under any delusions that that the work that we have ahead of us is easy. If it was easy, somebody would have already done it. But we are all, like, y'all would not work for Akron Public Schools if you were the kind of person that took the path of least resistance. So I believe we can do it. And I think that all of those players that were mentioned in that question are critical folks to have on the table for it.
Thank you. What makes this job interesting to you? Why APS?
That is a great question for me. Because again, I have been here for like 22 hours in my whole life. So I mentioned that I had incredible female superintendents as mentors. And I know that that is my something unique and something distinctive. Like I walked in that seat for I had the privilege of having the universe kick me in the behind and say, like, you gotta do this. The board needs you to step up. And I learned that I actually really liked it. I had been kind of afraid. And we can talk another time about what happened in Atlanta while I was there and the challenges of being through that, which you might have read about on the front page of the New York Times. So I walked through this period, which was actually a really hard period. We had the teacher walkout. We had a lot of like really complicated stuff happening with charter schools. We had a like $16 million budget imbalance that we needed to correct. Now thinking like, I actually really had fun. Dr. Hall, you were right. I have to do this. So last year, I really started thinking that a lot of the change that I had brought to Oklahoma City it's becoming sustainable. And my current boss, who was amazing, Dr. Sean McDaniel, encouraged me. He was like, you're ready, it's time. And so I am looking for a place where I can be me, as a leader. I'm looking for a place that shares those values of anti-racism and dismantling systems of oppression being like what we are explicitly about. And I find that stability, I mean, every single staff member that I have talked to here has just been phenomenal. It feels like this really could be the place where we write the science fiction future where social factors don't predict student outcomes. So, again, I could be wrong about that. Definitely incomplete, but that's why I'm here, and that's why I have enjoyed learning more about the city and about the schools today.
Okay. Well, following up on your statements there, what is your definition of social justice and what place does it have in education?
My definition of social justice, I have never thought about that. You know, I think for us that are like that sentence, social factors don't predict student outcomes, like that's it. I mean, that has to be in the context of maximizing human potential, like unleashing that human potential energy, making sure that every single kid has their unique distinctive thing and that they are equipped for it to be done. But I also think that that's true of staff members too. You know, nobody comes to work and wants to be mediocre, but the system creates conditions that make it real hard sometimes. And I think we have to have that conversation too. Like, I don't think that we reach social justice if we have employees who aren't making a living wage. I don't think we reach social justice if we don't build a culturally competent community where we are really honest about our own identities and what that means, how systems of advantage and disadvantage affect us as employees, and how we can be in strong, powerful accountability relationships with our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color colleagues. So I don't know the answer to that question, but it has something to do with unleashing the power of human potential energy, that nobody's life gets snuffed out because of how they were born or who they are. So thanks for that. I'm like writing that question down because I need to think about it.
I saw that, but that's a good one. We should ask that. What role do you feel school counselors play in schools? And what are your thoughts on them being full-time or part-time?
Okay, I have a clarifying question. Schools don't have full-time counselors.
No, some don't.
Some don't. Is it like a formula? Like a per kid formula? Okay. Thank you for helping me out with that. So I don't know why that context is. I don't know what that specific answer to that is, but I can tell you what we did in Oklahoma City. And that is, we have a citywide initiative called Embrace OKC that is a project of the Oklahoma City Compact, the Compact for Oklahoma City Public Schools, which is a partnership of the district, our foundation, the city of Oklahoma City, the United Way of Greater Oklahoma City, and the Chamber. And that group of leaders comes together and plans to support the district around big projects of stuff that we need that are ecosystem problems. Like they're problems that we can't solve on our own. And Embrace OKC was born actually when I was the chief of staff for the superintendent that I came to work for. And I was kind of one of the original founding steering committee members working on what the principles were for that. And so we have this like big bet and commitment on protecting and restoring the mental and behavioral wellness of our young people, and making sure that taking care of our staff is an important part of that, because you cannot give what you don't have. So long story short, we worked on from the winter of 2018 through the spring of 2019, a major project called the Pathway to Greatness, which you might have read about if you clicked on some of the links on my resume. That ultimate project culminated in some really important trade-offs for our kids. So we did close some buildings and repurposed them for other purposes in our community. And the cost savings went back into services for kids. So our community knew, I am giving up having this particular building open. My kid might go to a different school, my boundary might change, but what I'm getting, one of the most important things was a full-time counselor in every elementary school. That was not negotiable for us. The trade-offs also included things like full-time art, music, and PE in every elementary school, full-time library media specialists in every elementary school. You know, I could go on. The question was about counselors. I think it's really important that, I mean, we have to talk about ratios, but we also have to talk about equity in ratios, because some communities have more chaos walking through the door than others. Yes, full-time counselors, and we need to talk about what they're doing too, and what their credentials are. Like, we shifted toward hiring as many licensed professional counselors as school counselors, because the training is very different. And I don't know what that looks like in Ohio, like what the licensing looks like in Ohio. But that's something that I think is really important part of the conversation, is if we're making a bet on supporting social and emotional wellness, we have to make sure that the professionals that we're employing to do that have the skills to run groups, to do therapy, to do the things that the kids really need. In addition to, you know, the stuff that a school counselor usually does. And in many cases, especially at the secondary schools, you need both. Because like kids need some, it doesn't go away. The kids need support in planning for post-secondary education, especially in a college and career academy environment. So I'm gonna stop talking about that now. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about mental health that we could talk about more offline.
An important question that speaks to a major theme in the focus group information we got prior to this process. How will you address the inequity among schools in the district?
We gotta spend 55 minutes understanding the problem. Because one of the things, the challenges with questions like this is that it comes from an undefined premise. So what do we mean by equity? When I'm thinking about, like, there are different aspects of equity, right? Like, my district has adopted a equity framework that's really based on resource equity. So do kids have equal opportunities to access high quality and diverse teachers, high quality and diverse leaders, empowering rigorous content? Do they have equal access to instructional time and attention? Do they have equal access to their, you know, high quality learning ready school facilities? Like, we have a whole list. So there's like the resource input side, student experience side. There's also the outcome side of the equation. And we just need to be on the same page about what we mean when we say equity in equity, and focus in on a few things that we can push really hard on. I mean, one thing that I am a very firm believer in is the research that shows that organizations that have organizations that have 1 to 3 goals, how many do you think they achieve? They usually achieve 1 to 3 goals. Organizations that have 4 to 7 goals, how many goals do you think they achieve? 1. Organizations that have more than 7 goals, how many do you think they achieve? 0. So equity in particular is one of those places where it's kind of like if I'm trying to make a hole in this piece of paper and I push on it equally with all of my fingers, I am never going to make a hole in it. I have to have like a pen that I stab through it really hard in order to make a hole. So I think we have to kind of get together with that kind of visioning, like what does the jigsaw puzzle box look like? And then define those 1 to 3 goals for each of our teams in order to really understand kind of even what that question means. And then that's how we can make progress and access the wisdom of the system to design, to kind of redesign systems around kids and their experiences. So.
Thank you. What is your transition plan with the superintendent and chief academic officer exiting the organization at the same time?
Oh, that's a good question. I know that that role, assistant superintendent, chief academic officer, what's called here, is big shoes to fill. I mean, I have heard a lot of, I mean, obviously there has been a lot of positive change in the system with Dr. McWilliams-Woods here. And, you know, I am sad that the district is losing that kind of institutional memory at the same time. I have questions about why that's happening that I don't know the answer to yet. But it would be a very high priority for me to recruit someone great to fill those shoes. And I am kind of agnostic about whether it be, I'm not agnostic about it. I want a great person, and I actually think that oftentimes internal candidates can be among the best positioned to succeed, but I don't know your teams. So I can't tell you, like I would consider internal and external people to come because I feel like that person and I are gonna have to be like right in lockstep with each other because, you know, I don't have, like, I'm not an academician. I wrote a dissertation on doing professional development for leaders to support great literacy instruction, but I am not a teaching and learning expert. By any means, I read a lot. I'm smarter than your average bear, but I'm gonna need somebody who has that skill set to round out the rest of the team. Like nobody can do all the jobs by themselves. So it's really important. I don't know what the answer is for what happens next yet, but it would be close to the top of my list of priorities to make sure that we maintain continuity into the 21-22 school year.
Okay. We have a couple minutes left, and there are really 2 questions that I'd like to be able to get to here. So the first one is, what is your plan to recruit and retain educators, counselors, and other staff to reflect our learning community?
So this again is a question that I have to reject its premise because I don't have a plan. I know how I would go about creating a plan, and that is really understanding what is happening. What I do know is that we have an extremely seasoned instructional staff on average. We have a lot of talent and experience in the system. More about where talent and experience is walking out the door. We need to know about where the potential energy for talent and experience is walking out the door and why that's happening. And I also, I cannot say enough. I am a very big believer in this concept of paraprofessional to teacher pipeline. These are folks who are engaged in our community. They already know our kids. They want to be there. And the district can really, I mean, Carmen Williams, my friend whose picture I had up there, she she was just a phenom from day one as a teacher because she already knew our kids. And so providing that pathway for opportunity is something that right now, today, Oklahoma City is closing the loop for our graduates to be recruited and hired into those paraprofessional jobs so that they have a full-time job with benefits that helps support them while they go through college, and then hopefully they will come back and teach in their own community, which I think is incredibly powerful. We also have a sister pipeline that's for bilingual teachers. Oklahoma City is about 33% emergent bilinguals. And so that's another priority for us. I don't know what the priorities are here. I mean, I saw in the feedback that we really need to work on teachers of color. But I think that that's something that we have to design together.
Okay, and I have one last one.
Yep.
In our last little bit of time together. Please share with us a book that you are currently reading, and how is that adding to how you lead people?
I'm sorry. I just had my mouth full of water. So I am currently reading, what is currently on my bedstand is Bowen Family Systems Theory, which is a book. It's the eight concepts of Bowen Family Systems Theory, I think is the name of the book. It is a book that I am reading because I am working with the Restorative Justice Institute of Oklahoma to to progress beyond being a novice in using restorative, transformative, and healing justice practices. And Bowen Family Systems Theory is, it's kind of it's about emotional systems and how organizations, families, they make this argument that the family unit is kind of the primary emotional unit. So we're not actually individuals, that emotions operate in, whether we are in professional relationships with each other, family relationships, friendships, whatever. So it's been blowing my mind a little bit as I think about like one story that the author tells, or one concept that she talks about is like, imagine there is, and this is like, might be more relevant to people in Oklahoma than it is to people in Ohio, but imagine there is a field, a herd of cattle, and a coyote comes running. What will the cattle do? Like, one will see the coyote, and the rest, the anxiety is contagious. But then once they reach a boundary, like a fence, the cattle on the other side of the fence, it's less potent for them, that contagious anxiety. So like, what does that mean for building culture and trust? What does that mean for me being a better parent of 8 and 11-year-old boys? So I'm still sort of at the beginning of this kind of concepts of Bowen Family Systems Theory, but that's a little bit more of a window into my my mind and how it works than I was expecting to share with you today. So, it's that restorative, I believe that transformative and healing justice practices are the gospel. And that leaning into that those kinds of relationships with each other is how we're gonna fix this. So, I am grateful for the person who just then stabbed me in the heart without meaning to.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. We're at the end of our time here with all of you. And again, just gratitude for your willingness to come in here and be present, be a part of this, and to share your input with the board, please. This is very important for them, as they're going to be going into some pretty difficult deliberations. get through this week, and how they move forward. So, but I do want to again thank Dr. Rebecca Kaye for sharing what you have to share with us.
I really appreciate you all, I know that you worked a long day today, and I just am so grateful for you being here and helping me learn about the district. It's been a gift.
And for all of you, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And we're gonna be back here tomorrow doing this again.
That'll work.